Okay, so welcome to the project. We're going to create our background first, and I'm going to be using a selection of brown colours for the background, or to start the background, and then I'm going to bring in some lighter tones, and I'm just going to use a brush. Then once we come to adding some of the details, I'm going to use a sponge and a stencil. So I'll clear these out of the way and we will get started. Okay, so I'm going to be starting my background with the chocolate pudding and mahogany. So I want to keep those at their darkest colours. So I'm just going to add a little bit to the background. I'm going to kind of go from dark on one side, maybe a little bit lighter as it travels across. But I want to use both of these colours. I like the mahogany because it's got that bit of richness in there. So I'm just going to go in. Now, browns are not my usual colours, but for this technique and this project, I just think they're going to work really well with the golds. I want to use some golds in there too. So I'm just going in a kind of crosshatch pattern, mixing those colours together, get them down onto the background. So you can see it's quite a dark background. Let's get them moved around until we've got a base coat down, and then we'll start adding over the top. And I want to keep it where it's quite, you can see I'm keeping it quite sketchy as far as lines go. So this is quite an old brush, but I just think the sketchy lines are going to help with that visual texture that I want to be going on. So I've kind of started off with the darker colours over here, and then I've ended up with just that mahogany on that side, and I'm going to go in again with just using the chocolate pudding, which is that dark colour, just in this corner, and kind of bringing it out a little bit. And it's just going to add a little bit of depth going on. Again, just keeping crosshatch. I want to keep that kind of crosshatch going on with the brush. Okay, so that is my first base layer. I'm going to get that dry and then we're going to come back. Okay, so we've got that dry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with stencil TS062, and the first thing I'm going to do, I want to come from the right hand side, and I'm going to use black for this. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put in a few stenciled leaves in black onto that background. So keeping them, I want to keep the first leaves really, really dark where they're sitting into the background. So I'm going to do one there. So these are going to be really dark. Don't stress too much if they do not stencil perfectly. They don't need to be perfect. These are going to sit into the background. There's lots of stuff going over the top of this. So you don't need it to be perfect, but we want that nice dark layer going on. Okay, so I'm going to come out a little bit. Let's bring it out a little bit. It doesn't matter if they overlap. We're going to be adding layers over the top of this, but this is just going to give us our base layer. As I said, there will be lots of layers going on top. Of course, you can do this in your journal. I'm doing it on cardstock. It's just easier for me on camera to be doing this on cardstock, which is obviously flat on the desk, rather than working in a bulky journal. Okay, so maybe another one there. I just want to kind of come down from this corner, give that impression that it's coming in from this corner, from this side. Of course, you could do it the other way round. Okay, then maybe just a little bit coming off the top there, just to fill in that little gap. And I just go in, just fill in where it's needed. If you kind of look in and you think there's a bit of a gap there, just fill it in. So I might do one there as well, just on that edge. So you can keep kind of built that kind of shape there in the black. So what I'm going to do, Paperartsy paints obviously dry really fast anyway, but I'm going to get that dry and then we're going to come back and start adding the next layer. Okay, so we're nice and dry, so we know we've not got an issue with the background. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come in now with my new stencil, which is TS062, which is the tropical leaves. We're going to be using these two on there, and I'm going to start with chocolate pudding, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to build on top of chocolate pudding with mahogany so that we get a variation in leaf colour, etc, etc. So I'm going to grab my chocolate pudding. I've got a sponge, and the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to use the larger of the vines to start with, and I'm going directly over the top, so we're overlapping what we've already done with that black. So we want to push the black down. You can kind of see we want to be pushing that black down now. Hopefully if I lift that up a little bit, you can kind of see what we're trying to do. We're trying to blend it over the top, build up that background. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to add some more, and some of it's going to disappear into the background because don't forget we've used that colour in our background, and that's perfectly fine. We just want to give an indication that that is there, that those leaves are there, that foliage is there. So I'm going to come out here, and with each layer we're going to push the layer behind it a little bit further into the background and build up a little bit of depth, have some depth going on. I'm coming out a little bit, so it's bringing that vine out a little bit further. And it's going to be really quite subtle when it dries, especially the chocolate pudding, because a lot of that background is chocolate pudding. So we're just going to go in and just build up. So let's go a little bit more there, and it will be more evident once we start going in with a few lighter colours. So just filling in the spaces. It's just pushing each layer down and building up that depth in the project. So you can kind of see as this is drying, it's kind of sinking into the background a little bit more, and that's perfectly fine. That's exactly what we want. That's cool. So I'm just going to give that, do I need to give it a dry? No, I don't really. I'm just looking, there's only that bit that's wet. And then I'm going to go in, so now I'm going to grab the mahogany, which is going to show a little bit more. I'm going to go in with some of this one. I'm also going to use the little berries as well at some point. So let me grab another sponge, and we'll go in with the mahogany and add. I'm not worried about seeing the edges, you know, the end of the leaves. Doesn't need to go off the page because we are going to be layering up on top of this as well. So I'm just going to go in, layer up with this one. Just really building up that foliage. Again, doesn't matter if your stenciling's not perfect, this is going to get pushed into the background and it's just going to give you that bit of depth going on in the background. So just layering up. And I like that it really is very, very subtle. We don't want it to be in the forefront too much. We just want to create a little bit of depth going on. And as these colours are drying, because they are semi-opaque colours, they are kind of disappearing a little bit into the background, which is perfectly fine. You can just see them, which is cool. Okay. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. And then I think I might add, oh, don't want that. We're not ready for that yet. Let's go down there. There we go. So that's really building up some layers there. Okay, so let me have a look. I think I'm just going to go in. I'm going to do another layer. I wasn't going to, but I think I'm just going to do another layer with a little bit of the toffee colour, just to give a little bit more depth there. And the toffee colour is obviously going to show up a little bit more against that background. So let me just give this a quick dry, and we'll go in with the toffee. Okay, so we've got that nice and dry. So I'm just going to go in and add really lightly. So I just want a tiny bit. I don't want too much because I don't want this to be too solid. So I'm just putting a tiny bit of the toffee onto the sponge because I don't want it to really glare off the page. Hopefully that makes sense. So I just want it to be nice. I want it to show up, but just really subtly show up. Because obviously it's quite a bit lighter than the other colours, and I don't want it to be standing out. So that's fine. I don't want it to be standing right out from the page. I just want it to kind of subtly be there. Because we want to save the lighter colours for doing our lights. So we're going to add our lights obviously onto our tree, and we want those to be the lighter colours. So let's go in. You can see that just makes it stand out a little bit more, and it pushes those other colours down into the background a little bit more. So it works really well. So maybe, look, maybe a little bit there. And again, this one will dry a little bit darker. It won't be quite so bright when it dries. And a lot of this is going to be quite hidden away by the time we finish putting our lights on and our baubles and our bling. You can see it just picks up a little bit more, which is nice. So let's have a look. Let's Go there. That's cool. I'm just trying to give that impression of foliage in the background. That's cool. A couple more. Maybe something down there, and then one in the corner. And I think that will set us up. One there in the corner. Perfect. Perfect. So I'm going to make sure this is completely dry, because then we're going to start going in and painting in our lights. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to start painting in our lights. So we're going to start with our darkest colour, which is chocolate pudding, and I've got a small flat brush. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to start painting in circles. Because what we want to do, we want to create that blurred light effect. So we're just going to go in with this colour first of all, and you can do them in different sizes because they're going to overlap. I find it easiest to paint my circles with a flat brush, but you do whatever suits you. And I'm just going to go in around the foliage. Hopefully you can see that, because I know it's quite a dark colour. And we're just going to start painting in. Don't need to rush this. It's going to take a while because we've got to paint in a lot of dots. If we want to give that impression of shimmering lights, then we need to work from darkest colours to lightest colours. It's going to take us a while. So just go in, start with your dark colour. So I'm starting with my chocolate pudding, which is my darkest brown that I'm using. Okay, we can have some coming off the page as well. Like I said, different sizes gives it much more interest. And at the moment you kind of look in and you think, doesn't look anything like lights. And you're right, it doesn't. But to get that kind of shimmering, blurry effect, you've got to work from darkest colours and then work through to your lightest colours. So what we're going to do, I'm going to clean the brush off. The paint's nearly dry, so I don't even have to worry about that. And I'm going to start going in with my next colour. So my next colour is mahogany. And what you want to do is they can overlap each other. You kind of want them to start overlapping a little bit, because by having them overlap, all different sizes, it's going to give that impression of depth. You know, that those lights are going into the background. So, of course, if you want to draw your circles in first, then of course you can. And it doesn't have to overlap every single one. You know, we're just going to build up. But by using the darkest colour first and then working our way up to the lightest colours, it's just going to give that impression of depth. don't rush it. There's absolutely no need to rush, just take your time. And they dry back a little bit. They dry back lighter, so they are going to sit into the background. So if I just, hopefully you can kind of see that, but if I bring it up, you can kind of see both of those colours. You can see the dark one, you can see the next colour, but they are sinking down into the background, and that's exactly what we want. So we've got that. Next colour is going to be toffee. So I'm going to go in with the toffee. I'm not going to clean the brush off other than with a dry cloth, because a lot of these paints are semi-opaques or translucents, semi-opaques or translucents, and we don't want to make them any more translucent, which is what we'll do if we've got a wet brush. So it all looks a bit weird at first, but these colours are going to work so well. They're just going to work so well with the gold. Like I said, if you feel like you need to draw them in first, then by all means draw in. But I usually find if you're using a flat brush, you can get them quite nice. You can get quite a nice round shape going on. And I quite like, because they are semi-opaque, you can still kind of see through them, which I kind of like for this. It's giving those impression, or the impression I think of like gold, glass, maybe glass lights. You could use a stencil for this. If you've got a circle stencil as well, you could use a circle stencil. You have to take your time. There's no rush. Okay, so that's toffee. So let's have a look. Next one I'm going to use is caramel. So a little bit lighter again. The lighter it is, the more it appears to be in the foreground. And we don't want quite so many, because we're going to start getting lighter and lighter now. as it gets lighter, it's going to appear to be a little bit more twinkly. It's going to give that effect that the rest of the lights are kind of fading into the background, or hopefully it's going to. So hopefully you can see it's starting to appear a little bit lighter. So I'm going to go with Gold Rush next. So Gold Rush is slightly lighter than caramel. We're going to work our way up to white. You can see they're getting brighter now. We are going to go in and add gold at some point, because we want things to sparkle, of course. Don't forget we've got baubles to go on our tree as well, so just a few small ones. And it's just creating that overlap, so we're creating an overlap on there. So it's looking good. We have maybe a little one there coming off the edge. Always nice to have colours coming off the edge as well. Then I'm going to switch to my next one. So my next one is going to be vintage lace. So we'll do vintage lace, and then we're going to do white, and then I want to add a little bit of gold in there somewhere. So in fact we might not need to add white, because vintage lace is quite a bright colour, so we might actually not need to. I might be able to add white with just with pen. You can always tidy up any edges as well with your pens. I think I'm not gonna use the white. I think I'm just gonna stick with the vintage lace, because it seems to be bright enough to not have to use white. So by doing that one a little bit bigger, it's going to bring it forward a little bit. So you can kind of see lots of overlap in there. I think that's looking quite cute. So I'm gonna leave it there for a minute, and I'm gonna get that dry. And I want to add a little bit of pen work. I do want to add some gold as well. So I want to get that dry first, and then we will move on. Okay, so what I want to do, I've got that base is in place. What I want to do is add a little bit of sparkle now, make it stand out a little bit more. So I'm going to use my embossing pen, and I'm going to use a couple of different shades of embossing powder. So I'm going to use a gold powder, and then I'm going to use my Mai Tai powder, which has got a copper blue tone to it. So I want to use a bit of both of those. So what I want to do, I'm going to go in, let's do the gold first. So I'm going to use my pen for this. Of course, you could use a stencil and just stencil through. So what I'm going to do, I just want to do some small baubles with the gold. So just some small little circles. I don't want anything too big, and I can do a few at a time. So let's do a few. Obviously the ink, because it's over the top of the paint, it's going to stay wetter for a little bit longer anyway. So let's do those ones first, and we'll emboss those, and then we'll come back and finish off. Obviously you do want to make sure that everything is dry, all of your paint is dry, before you go ahead and start putting embossing powder on, because if you don't, all it's going to do is your embossing powder is just going to stick to everything else as well. So I'm just going to lift that up and give it a little tap. Got my excess back into my pot, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn it. I'm going to do the rest now, because I can do it and then heat emboss all at the same time. So maybe a slightly bigger one there. Colour that in. So it is quite handy having the pen, because obviously it does mean that you can be really precise with where you're going to add. Let's do that one. I like to do a few and then add the embossing powder before it dries out too much. So let's do those ones. I can heat emboss at the same time, as long as I don't knock it with my hand. Give it a little tap, get the excess off. Now obviously if there is any excess that you can see that you want to remove, then you just get yourself a soft brush. So I can get a soft brush and just kind of brush it away. To be honest, I don't mind if I have a little bit excess, especially when it's a mixed media kind of thing. It doesn't seem to, it doesn't hurt it too much. So I just want a few, maybe a few up here. Again, always overlapping. Overlap, maybe a gold one up in the corner there. And I do want to add some sparkly ones as well, so maybe a little one there. Okay, so that's cool. So let's heat emboss this, and then we'll go in with some of the sparkle. So I'm going to let my heat gun heat up just for a few seconds before I start going in. cool do they look? They look like they are sparkling now. They really look like they're glowing. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go in and I want to use that sparkle this time. I might add a little bit more of the gold. I'm not sure yet. But I'm going to add a little bit of sparkle first. So I just want to go in. So this is my Mai Tai embossing powder from Wow. Sorry, Mojito, which is, it's like, it's a copper blue. So I think this is going to look really nice with the brown. That copper's just going to stand out with the brown, I think. It's going to look cool. So we'll do a few, as we did before. And all different sizes. So let's start with those. Always, if you're using the sparkle, the glitter embossing powders, always give it a shake first, because the colours obviously have got different, they're different weights. So if you don't, they can kind of slip down and you end up with all one colour. Ooh, that's going to look nice. So we'll put that back in. So I always give it a shake every time, because you can see already, so if I show you that there, where I've just poured that back in, you can see the copper is sitting more at the top of the powder. So what I want to do before I do the next ones, I want to give that a shake so that we get a nice even coat when we sprinkle it on. So let's go around, figure out where we want to go. As I said, the pen just makes it really cool. Of course you could do it with a stencil. If you've got you have a circle stencil, you could use that if you don't want to draw in. Kind of feel like I want to add, kind of do feel like I want to add a few more of the gold ones in, maybe some smaller ones. And maybe one there. Go. So I've given that a shake just to make sure that the colours nice and mixed. Go in, add my powder, shake and tap it off. So I'm going to heat set those, and then I'm going to have a look. In fact, I need a little bit more there. Just need a bit more on that one. I can kind of see that one needs a bit more. That's better. So I'm going to heat set those, and then I'm going to have a look and see if I want to add any more anywhere. Okay, so let me have a look. I need to have a look at it and see what I'm thinking. I'm really loving that. It's really making those stand out. I'm feeling like it needs a little bit of white. So I'm going to do some really small ones, in white. So I kind of feel like if I do some tiny ones in white, they're going to be the brightest. They're going to be the ones that are going to stand out. So just some small ones. Doesn't have to be anything too much. I'm kind of thinking if we've got the white ones, they're going to be the ones that are going to stand out in the crowd. So instead of using the white paint, like we said originally, using white powder instead. Okay, so let's do those, then we'll see what it's looking like. Okay, let's tap those off. I think they're going to glow. Okay, so let's turn that around. Okay, one there, and a little one there. So we'll heat emboss those, have a look, and I'll decide if I need to put any more anywhere once they're set. Okay, let's heat set and we'll have a look. Okay, so I think that works. I think that they look like they're sparkling on the tree, which is good. So let's have a think and then we'll come back. Okay, so what I'm going to do next, before I go any further, because I want to make my baubles hang on my tree, I am going to ink around the edges. I really want to darken up the edges. I'm going to start with a brown ink pad, and then I'm going to finish up with a black ink pad. So I'm just going to ink up. I'm going to put a bit of scrap paper underneath. And then I'm just going to start. I just want to get it nice and dark around the edges. Always helps to ink your edges of any project. Give yourself, you want some sort of border. So I'm just going to do the brown first, all the way around. And then I'm going to go in and add some black just to really darken up the very edges. And then we're going to move on and start getting our baubles made. And then once we've got our baubles made, then we can move on to finishing touches. I think I might add a few gemstones for finishing touches, kind of feeling it. So then I'm just going to go in with my black and really darken up right around the very edges, just to deepen that. Side. I'm going to give this ink a chance to dry, because when you put ink over the top of paint, obviously your paint has created a barrier, so it does take a little bit longer to dry than maybe it normally would. So we'll get that dry and then we'll come back. Okay, so what we're going to do, we are going to create our background, which we are going to add our stamps over to create our baubles. So I'm just using some cerulean paint. So the cerulean is going to really stand out against the browns and golds that are sitting in that background. So I've got a piece of A4 smoothie card. I'm not going to need the whole thing. We're going to go over the top of this. So I've painted it on. I do need to make sure, I'm just going to do it in one tone. No, in fact, let's not do it in one tone. Let's just go in and just add. So I'm just going in and I'm just adding a little bit. So I'm just going to rub it in. So this is the deep sea. It's just going to give a little bit of depth. Let's do that. So we're going to get this dry and then we are going to be stamping over the top. Okay, so I have my piece of painted card. It's now dry, and I'm going to go in and stamp onto that with my baubles. I'm going to stamp probably an extra couple because I'm not 100% sure how many I'm going to use on this. So I'm going to stamp a couple and we will see how we get on. Let's do 2 of this one. So you can use any ink you want. You can use an archival, or you can use VersaFine, whatever suits you. Let's do this one. Again, as I said, I'm not 100% sure what is going to go on this page, so I'm going to stamp a few different ones, and then I can kind of decide from there. So I'm going to put the key on there as well and just stamp the head of the key, not the whole thing. So I'm thinking it's kind of got a bauble shape. It could work really well. It might not. I'm going to do a few of those. As I said, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to use, so I'm going to give those a blast with the heat tool. I'm going to get them cut out and then we will be back. Okay, so I have cut out the shapes that I'm going to be using and I'm ready to put them down. I'm going to be using foam tape to put these down. I do like my focal points to stand up. What I did do, which you will notice, is I did ink. Once I'd cut out, I did ink around the outside of my bauble shapes. So I'm going to place them where I want them. I've already kind of had a look and decided where they were going to go. So I'm going to place them where they're going, and then I'm going to start with finishing touches. So finishing touches is going to be my pen work. I think I'm going to add some gems. We'll get this into place, and then we need to start adding our details. So you can see what I've used is I've used part of the larger stamp, part of this one, and just cut it down so it was a little bit smaller. I didn't need it to be quite that big, so I did cut that down. Then let's see, I want this one to be down a little bit lower than the rest. This one is going to come down just from the top. So I thought these looked quite like little baubles if I cut the tail off because of the little loop at the top. And then this one can come to the side. I think I'll cut that off at the side. Or shall I go down here? No, I think I'm going to go with my original. So my original idea was to have it coming off at the side and cutting that off. So I'm just going to give that a trim. Let's turn it over and just trim that off. We don't need that bit. We want it to be nice and straight. So that's looking good. So what we need to do is think about doing some pen work. So I want to do some white pen work, I want to do some black pen work, and I want to add some, probably a little bit more gold and some gemstones. So I'm just going to grab black pen. I've got black pen, white pen, and we're ready to start adding some detail. So let's start. We need, our baubles need to have our little hooks on them. And I'll emphasise this with white as well. Obviously they need to have their little hooks, they need to be hanging from something, otherwise they're just going to look a bit strange, aren't they? So I'm just going to add that in. Like I said, I'll emphasise this afterwards. But for now, we just want to get those on there. They need to look like they're hanging from something. They can't just look like they're just kind of sitting there. They don't have to go all the way to the top, because don't forget they're hanging on the tree. So we can just add just a little loop. Just make it look like it's hanging. As I said, we'll emphasise these as well. So that can come up to there. So now, at least, if I bring this up, at least they now look like they are actually hanging on the tree, rather than just sitting in mid-air. Kind of feel like I want to add, so where I've got these branches and that underneath, I kind of feel like I do want to add a little bit to those. I just want to make them look like they stand out just a little bit more. So I'm just adding a few lines here and there. And it's just going to make them stand out just a little bit more in the background. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm being quite rough. I don't need these to look perfect. But I just feel like it needs something in there. Just to emphasise those just a little bit. It's just going to give it a little bit of depth there as well. So I'm just really roughly going around those leaves. And not on every one either. You don't need to sketch in every single one. Just a few here and there will be enough. Just to emphasise that there's something there. It's cool, so maybe a few. What have we got there? Let's see. You see, I've really not done too much. Just a few little lines in between, just to make them stand out a little bit more. I'm going to go in with the gold. So this is a gold Posca pen, give it a good shake. And I'm just going to add, let's have a look, I'm going to add a few details to the bauble itself. I don't want too much because I want it to stand out from the background, and I think the black makes them stand out a little bit more. So just a little bit. And You can see I'm not putting too much. I don't want too much going on there. And maybe one there. And obviously once that's dry, then I can go back in. So just I don't want too much. And I'll emphasise some of these with black pen or white pen afterwards. Okay, I'm going to get those dry because that paint is quite wet, and then we'll add in some more detail. Okay, so I've got that paint dry because that was going to cause me a problem otherwise, and I just want to add a few more details. So I'm going to kind of come back in here and just define these lines a little bit because they're quite thick. So I just want to define them just a little bit. And we are going to add some bling to this as well, because it wouldn't be baubles and bling without the bling. So just defining those areas. Maybe these ones as well. I'm going to add some white. Okay, let's come back with our white. Just going to add a few pops of white here and there. And I want to add a few highlights to the little hangers as well. Maybe a few. I don't want to add too much, just a little bit of detail. I'm not going to worry about the middle. I'm just going to put a gem in there. So let's do those. Okay, and add a little bit of a highlight to the, just on one side, so it kind of stands out a little bit more. It's just going to make it stand out a little bit more, I think. Give it a little bit of a highlight. Okay, let's have a look. Let's see how we're going. It's looking good. I feel like I need a little bit more white in there. Of course, you can do as much or as little as you like. I might put a little bit in there as well. Just think sometimes those little additions make all the difference. Yep. I always say sometimes it's the small details, and pen work is definitely one of them when you get down to that last little bit and you're doing your pen work. So what I think as well would be really good is not on all of them, but just on some, just on a few of these, is to do little you can kind of see, make them look like little starbursts on there. Not on all of them. I don't want to do it on every single one. So if I do it on all of them, it's just going to look odd. But if we just do it on a few, it's just going to add an extra little detail. So just a few here and there. I'm not going to go nuts. Maybe. Well, I'm going to add another one. I'm just going to add another one in pen. So I feel like I need one there, but I don't really want to do it on that large one. That's cool. So I think that's looking cool. So what I want to do is add some bling. So I've just got a few sticky adhesive gems, and I'm just going to go in and just here and there. I've got a few different colours, so just here and there, just going to add some in, because it wouldn't be bling without bling. And I do want to add a few onto my baubles as well. Of course, you can go as mad as you like. Okay, I'm going to have a few on the centres of my baubles as well. Love a bit of bling. And I've got some of these tiny ones I'm going to add as well. Bear with me. So I've got some of these little tiny ones I'm going to add. Of course, you can go as nuts at this stage as you like. I love a bit of bling. I'm not going to shy away. And so we're almost there. Let's have a look. Anywhere else? Of course, I'm going to put some somewhere else. And oh, let's get rid of that. Quite good as well because I'm getting to use up my little gemstones. I'm trying to use everything in my stash. We all have that stuff, don't we, that we've had for years. So maybe another one there, and maybe another little one there. Okay, so the last thing for me to do, I want to add some splatter. So I want to add some splatter onto this. Let's have a look. So what colour splatter should I add? I'm thinking I'm going to add a tiny bit of the cerulean that's already on there, just a little bit. I'm not going to do too much. But I just think it's going to work really well to tie those colours together. So I'm going to grab a brush, load it up with water, wet my paint. I'm just going to go in and just add a little bit in that blue. That's going to really tie everything together. I'm not worrying where it goes. And of course you can add as much or as little as you like. Anybody who knows me knows I love a bit of splatter. So I think that is it. I don't think I need to add anything else to that. Actually, I think I might just add a little bit of gold Posca splatter just to tie in that gold. So just a little bit. Can never have enough splatter. And this one, it'll be a little bit bigger as well, which is cool. Liking that. Yeah, I'm thinking that is it. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the blog post. I hope that you've enjoyed the video tutorial, and I hope to see what you make. Bye bye.